I mean, it's worth it for the song alone, right? CFL Power Rankings. I, I messaged this to a few people. I don't know why this was the week that broke me, but this was the week where I just kind of stared at my phone. I was like, I have no idea. I feel very good about Montreal, where they're at. You can probably figure it out. I feel very good about where Calgary is at. And after that, not a clue. You can make a case for almost anybody anywhere. And so yeah, you're right, Conrad. The only gimme putt is Calgary at 9. So let's start with that. Calgary's at 9. That's another tough loss against the Saskatchewan Roughriders in a game where you absolutely had to have it. And once again, the defensive line continues to have problems. They were eaten alive by Armstead, who signed with that team on Tuesday, and that was rough. Yeah, Conrad, I bet that was a rough one to be in attendance for. I am sure from a Stam standpoint. I would have enjoyed it greatly, but from a Stam standpoint, that would have been a frustrating one to work your way through and to try to enjoy a little bit. At least the weather was nice, right? It was better than it was during the day, though. But anyway, Calgary, bad football team. Defensively, not being able to get any stop when Armstead is running wild there. And especially fourth quarter when your defense needs a stop so you can get your offense the ball back. And the offense actually moved the ball relatively well in this game, especially on a 3rd-and-1 quarterback sneak, which drove me insane. If for no other reason than I always use the Riders don't give up any rushing yards to anyone ever stat in the 3-down best bet. And now I just have to just take that of the old copy and paste. But still, Calgary, they were actually moving the ball well. And so if you, as a Rider fan watching that game, I didn't want the Stamps to get the ball back. And so the Stampeders defense not being able to get off the field in those crucial times when everyone in Canada knew that the Riders were going to run the football in those situations is really concerning. This team is far too easy to run on. And offensively, they're able to put it together sometimes, but there's still big plays that are lacking at certain moments. And really the only reason they were able to move the football well, and the real reason why I didn't want to really pull the trigger on them as a best bet this week, is Saskatchewan has been picked apart lately by a lot of stuff underneath. And that's how Calgary was able to move the ball. That's kind of only how Calgary is able to move the ball, is those little chunk plays. Chunk is a bad way of describing it, because that would indicate that they're getting actually quite a few yards. It's the little underneath stuff that they're picking up that is allowing them to move the ball against Saskatchewan. They had problems with that against Winnipeg as well, and I would imagine other teams are going to pick up on that. So yeah, no, it's abysmal right now. Conrad in the chat. Yeah, drop plays is a very good way of putting it, Deej. You're right. When Mike Rose is your only member of the front four that is above replacement yet level, yikes. And the Demario Houston signing, trash. When Ben LaBrosse is your leading tackler, that is a big problem. That part, very fair. Yeah, and it's just, that was the thing, Conrad, at the beginning of the season, when you looked at this defense. This looked to be the strength of this team. I said this yesterday. I do, for the season preview, I go through each team. I was like, okay, here are the difference makers on this team. All of them were on the defensive side. I think if I didn't have Bagleton on there, that was a mistake. But either way, most of them anyway, 75% of them were on the defensive side of the football. And none of them have looked very good so far this year. And that has been a very big problem for this Stampeders team. And now it is very apparent that the playoffs aren't going to happen for this group this year, or at least probably won't happen. Not that Saskatchewan is going to run away and hide or anything like that, but just that this team can't get these wins that they have needed. Now we get into the murky, I don't know what to do part. I still have Hamilton at 8. And that is with the admission that they are playing significantly better football right now. And there is a case to have them, I think, quite a bit higher in the power rankings based off of how well they are playing. And the big thing for them is that defense coming up with big plays at big times. They give up quite a few points to Toronto, but that's going to happen. But overall, this defense is putting up some real numbers with Chris Jones back as the defensive coordinator. Bo Levi Mitchell is protecting the ball well and is playing at an MOP level. All of this is to say that Hamilton maybe should be a little bit higher. At 7, I have Ottawa, which seems very low for Ottawa, but it's a few tough performances in a row that have kind of knocked them back. But I can't right now put them behind Hamilton, even though Hamilton just beat them a couple of weeks ago, just because of what Ottawa was able to do. That this one's a full report card type of a thing. I just can't put Ottawa back there. But there's major concerns with Ottawa. The offense has started, it feels like teams are figuring them out a little bit. And defensively, they just lost their second leading tackler, I believe second, Darius Pickett, and he was just a beast in all forms of defense, and that has been very limiting for them. And so that is, I think, a problem that could continue to rear its ugly head going forward. At 6, it's Saskatchewan. And again, you can make a case for Ottawa ahead of Saskatchewan. You can make a case for Hamilton, quite frankly, ahead of Saskatchewan right now, based off of what has happened in the last month. But the Riders have been in a lot of these games, and they were finally able to get over the hump and actually pick up a win in one in a very good fashion here over the Calgary Stampeders. Well, very good's maybe a bit of a stretch, but in good fashion against the Calgary Stampeders, and worked their way back into a playoff spot, and realistically 3 points out of top spot in the West, but 1 point out of a home playoff game for the West semifinal, which wouldn't have thought possible a few weeks ago. So I do think that they are kind of turning things around here at the right time. At 5, it's BC. With the talent this team has, you could make a case for them at 1. With how they played in their last game, you could make a case for them down at 8. That is where all of this kind of swings around for the BC Lions. Nathan Rourke is going to be the starting quarterback. I do think that's probably the right call, and I do think that there is probably a short-ish leash with Vernon Adams and how well he played throughout the year. Nathan Rourke needs to get it figured out. And to his credit, it did seem like he was going to, and then had a bad game against Toronto. And Toronto's defense hasn't looked great all the time, but they do have some talented players that can give you some problems. At 4, it's Edmonton. This is one where you kind of have to have them there, right? Like, I don't, even with a loss to Winnipeg, it's tough to drop them too far down given the run that they are on lately. Losing to the number 1 team in the West is going to happen. Trey Ford, exciting. This team is heading in an exciting direction now with Chris Jones no longer in charge of anything there. Toronto at 3. Again, they're coming off of a couple of tough losses, and so it is tough to have them this high up. I still think that they are a very talented football team, and I still think it does kind of all come together. Although this would be the one that I'm probably, like, you can make a very good case for Toronto ahead of them. I would say season long, you would have a good case of putting BC ahead of them, but Toronto just beat BC a couple of weeks ago. So it's a difficult thing to kind of maneuver. At 2, it's Winnipeg. You can't have them very much further down than 2, I don't think. They are number 1 in the West. They are winning a bunch of these games. I still am not super impressed by everything I've seen with them, but I do think that this is still a good football team and deserves to be up here. And at number 1, it's Montreal. They get back in the win column over the Ottawa Red Blacks this week, and it feels like they are the most complete team in the Canadian Football League right now. A couple more from the chat. Question: is Dave wearing too many hats? Yes. Is it time for Mark Killam to finally get his shot? That part I don't know about necessarily. With Mark Killam, I do think that he deserves somewhat of an opportunity, but I do also think that Dave Dickinson, the coach, is still a good coach. He has had all of his success as a coach. As a general manager, it hasn't really worked out. And so I think if you are going to take a hat away from him, which yes, absolutely, it's too many, I do think that let someone else worry about the roster. Dave Dickinson is actually a very good coach. Let him do that, and don't have all of his time be taken up figuring out how he can try to fill out this roster on a week in, week out basis. I think he has to just be in charge of game planning, and you need someone else to look after the roster, which might be tricky because of the whole cap thing that the CFL does for staff, but this is the way it goes right now. The coaching hat is the easiest to remove, though, unfortunately. No, and that's fair, because you do have like the straight line fill-in, right, of Mark Killam to get there. And there's a few very worthy candidates, right? Like Buck Pierce out in Winnipeg was a finalist for the job in Saskatchewan with Corey Mace. There are a lot of very good coordinators out there that can just fill up right into that role and take that opportunity, although Killam would be the easiest one next. So that is the easiest one to figure out, but it is also the one that I think he is best at. And so I think if you're going to make a change, it has to be one to put your team in the best spot, not just because it's the easiest decision that is there to be made. So I think that's the way it goes. Also, Conrad saying BC dominates the CFL next season with a full off season of Rourke. That part I would agree with. They need to get an offensive line there. And while it's nice to have a MLP candidate as a backup, I do think that Vernon Adams probably should be moved on, just if nothing else. Like, I know we don't get giant blockbuster trades in the CFL, and honestly, it might end up just being like a cut or something like that. But I do think that you need to try to get at least a bit of a less expensive option as your quarterback. And yeah, Vernon Adams is an upgrade for most of the league, right? Like, it just so happens that BC signed the one guy that could take his spot. But yeah, like he was on pace to break Doug Flutie records when he was playing well this season. So yes, VA, Calgary, Saskatchewan, yes, Edmonton. I mean, the Trey Ford thing is fun, but no question. Winnipeg, I know Zach Collaros, institutional, whatever, would change it in a heartbeat. Toronto, I couldn't run away from Chad Kelly fast enough. Hamilton, Bo Levi Mitchell is playing very well, but Vernon Adams, quite a bit younger. Ottawa, know you love Drew Brown. There's no way you can compare them, right? Like, and in Montreal, Cody Fajardo won you a Grey Cup and was also playing at an MOP level before he got hurt. So that one's maybe a bit difficult to do. But aside from that, you can make a very compelling case for Vernon Adams on basically any team. And so I do think that there are some holes on this BC team, and whether it is just with freed up cap space or with a couple of assets coming back your way in a trade, I do think that that would be something to do. But yes, BC already would be the 2025 favorites to win the Grey Cup, and honestly would be an interesting bet to win the Grey Cup this year. Like, we're talking full offseason for Nathan Rourke. There's only a few games left, but if he kind of gets them going, like BC, I feel pretty confident they're going to make the playoffs. You don't love that they're going to have to go on the road to Winnipeg to win the West Final, which is how this is kind of looking right now. But, I mean, come on. This guy is so good that I think that there are going to be opportunities for him to kind of figure out which direction that this BC Lions team can go. Because when he is playing well, they are the undeniable best team in the Canadian Football League. All right, some good CFL talk here on the show today. Let's move into the world of the NHL. And obviously, we have done the list of the best players in the league. And I'm not even going to say these are the most important players of the league. I am just saying that there are a few players who hold the fate of the NHL season in their hands. And so today we're going to rank them. This is a very big list show. We are going to look at some of the most, the players who will decide the season in the NHL. After I answer Toxic's question, why didn't he get an opportunity in the NFL, you think? We've kind of talked about this before, but he's in a tricky spot because he's undrafted. And you look at Hard Knocks and how the Giants were talking about like Devin Singletary and those guys. It's like, oh, well, that's a guy you can trust. They go with names and they go with pedigree. And so for you to get an opportunity over a guy who these GMs have heard of, or B, a guy who these GMs have drafted, you have to be uncommonly good. And while Nathan Rourke showed a few uncommonly good plays, it's still not enough for a team to say, oh yeah, this guy who we drafted in the third round, no, we're going to take the undrafted dude from the Canadian Football League and put him over there. Or yeah, no, Eddie Dalton is what he is, but we got this guy off of waivers, so here he comes, right? Like, okay, Jacksonville, quarterback situation isn't great, but Mac Jones was a first-round pick. And so we're going to take that opportunity over Nathan Rourke. The Giants, right? Like, Tommy DeVito, he won a game for us last year and everyone loved him. How can we pick this guy over our guy, right? So there's all of these different things that you have to overcome when you are doing that. And I just think it was a bit too much for him to overcome. And now he has a great opportunity here in the CFL.